Welcome back to Booked, the podcast that helps you get booked on more podcasts. I am Spencer Carpenter with Outlier Audio and my co-host.
Amanda Foley with Curate Your Soul.
And today we are going to talk about just some of the things that we do as podcast strategists and podcast, actually we were talking about this before.
Yeah, let's have this conversation.
Let's first talk about this. So I came from music, and so I've called myself a podcast booking agent because in music, a talent agent or a booking agent is what we are called. And I wanted to use that as a way to differentiate myself from the other people in the industry because some have a PR background, some have a marketing background. They call themselves podcast placement strategist, or they call it interview marketing. And there's no real term in this space for this position. It's still made up. We're all still calling it what it is that resonates with us the most. But you mentioned that maybe there's more connotation of a podcast booking agent being someone that is more like a VA or an assistant that isn't as specialized, and you know, that I should consider not using that term. And it plays into what we're talking about here in terms of what we do. So what was your recommendation?
Yeah, and honestly, when you've positioned it to me is in that you do it because you came from the music industry, that makes a lot more sense to me. Cause I get it. Because then I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
I think what always kind of comes up for me is that there's so many people out there, and I don't even want to say doing what we do, but maybe offering a service of getting people on podcasts, right?
Sure.
Because that's what people want these days, because they are starting to understand what we've known for a lot of years, which is the power of guesting on podcasts. And so I think I'm not opposed to the term booking agent, or was that what you call it? Or booker.
Yeah, podcast booking agent.
Booking agent. I just think you want people to know that you bring much more than that. Like I always say, like, I know you didn't come from a traditional PR background, but you approach it like a PR person would, which is building connections for your clients, because what is public relations but relating to the public, right? So at the very base level. And I think the difference, and again, I always go to the nuance because I think this is where the sort of the interesting conversation always lies. But I think that some people are out there just spraying a template pitch out to thousands of podcasts, hoping that they can meet a quota over a period of a couple of months, where I feel like, not to say that we don't have some shorter term clients, but I also think we have clients that we work with that want that longer term strategy to actually help them get on some of those bigger shows that you're not going to necessarily meet the criteria for right out of the gate.
Right.
And I don't think that that is going to happen for many people that work with a straight podcast. I don't want to call it a booker, but you know what I mean? Someone that's literally out there just like checking a box.
Getting the interviews.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not really ensuring that those interviews are going to lead to more interviews or be valuable connections.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you consider, actually having consultations with your client about, well, what is your outcome? Like, what does success look like for you? Pushing them if they don't have something like a freebie or a lead magnet. Well, you should have that because it's going to assist with accomplishing these goals. Are you going to be repurposing this content? Where are you repurposing it? Why are you repurposing it? What is the overall? The first question I ask people when they get on a call with me is, I say, thanks for scheduling a call. How do you see podcasts helping you? And so again, for some people, it's raising capital, it's pushing a book, it's for content on LinkedIn, it's for thought leadership, whatever it is. I don't know how much the answer really changes the outcome of what it is we're doing, but
well, it's important to know, even whether or not you're going to take that client, because I think some of those clients get on those calls and they want immediate sales.
Right.
And I will forever and always maintain that we are not a sales tool.
Yeah. We're not lead generation.
We can sometimes do that, but we're here to grow their warm audience.
Right.
That then they have to market and sell to.
Well, so with all that in mind, we just mentioned that we will strategize with people. And that was what you said to me is, maybe position as a podcast booking strategist.
Right. Or a strategic booker or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Just showing, because I think it underplays the depth of what you do.
Yeah.
Like knowing the more like we talk and I hear more about the way you approach things, I definitely wouldn't put you in the category. I mean, I get pitches every day and I would not put you in the category of saying that you're just spraying pitches out there.
Well, so beyond those things, what are some of the things that we do that most people don't know or understand? That was how we were going to open this originally. It's just, what are some of the things that we do that clients never really see, and we don't make their problem? That is part of the service, is how do we make this easy for people? I've always explained that, like, part of as being a podcast booking agent coming from music is you're making it so the artist just had to show up and do as little as possible. That's the goal. They don't need to know the details other than...
And that's similar.
Yeah, well, right? how to sound check, when to get on stage, when bus call is. Just show up and do your thing. And so that is like part of our system, is not just we get the invitation and then loop in the client and say, book this. Like, I have an admin assistant that books for them.
Oh, do you? I don't do that part.
Yeah. So we will, we have a spreadsheet. We'll put the like Calendly link or whatever, and we'll say, look, you can do this if you want. Because there's some clients that are just control
they have
freaks.
like really hard mine have very difficult schedules.
Yeah.
Like, I could never make those decisions.
We'll say, you can schedule this if you want. You have to include our email so we have the info. But part of this service is my assistant, Trisha, who's amazing, will book this for you. So pick the day and time. We will fill out all the additional details. If there are other forms, we will handle it. If we cannot answer some of those questions based on the info we have,
right,
we will go and ask for that additional info. And there are some shows that are like, one of my clients, Jonathan Green, we do his podcast editing. He's a great host. He really cares about the quality of the conversation. He has said to me, don't fill this out. I want your client to fill this out because it's going to impact the
interview
quality
and the
of the
questions
interview.
And
And so that is an example where, like, we can schedule it, but I send the form to the guest. I'm like, hey, you have to do this one, and here's why. It's going to make for a better interview. And then other things like, on the research front, like, the email that we might find for our podcast might be 12 years old. It's not the email anymore.
Or it may not be the best one.
Might
Even
not
in
be
the
the best
systems,
one.
the one they give you, I don't always use the ones.
No. And so we have to do further, research there. If we are doing research based on, the spiritual investor comes up with a lot of terms.
There's a lot of weeding that has to happen.
So for every 20 shows that you find for your
it's very, very rare that I place her on investing shows.
Yes.
If anything, because of that, for that reason.
And so for every 20 shows you find, only one might be worth reaching out to.
Yep.
And just because you reach out to them doesn't mean
they're going
they
to say
respond
yes,
or
right.
they say yes.
I think people don't realize that even like the rate of actually securing an interview to the number, the ratio of how many emails we have to send out. And it's not just because we're spraying emails. For me, at least, every email is very intentionally edited. I'll back up for a second and say I don't do a lot of the things that you do, only because most of the clients that I work with are like have me on, like, I almost become sort of like a fractional communications officer for a lot of them.
Right.
Not that I do their marketing or anything like that, but I work at a little bit of it, like in a different capacity with them too, because I do some of the traditional PR stuff too. But I do know a lot of people do that. They all have assistants that would prefer to sort of handle that anyway, just because their calendars and their travel is insane.
I'll also have Trisha work with their assistant.
Like depending on like the situation. I said that can vary. I think like that's a big service that I know for me, at least the way my brain works, I would probably screw something up if they left me in charge of it. But what I'll say is this. The very first thing that I do, even though, so you said, you asked the question, what do you want out of this? And I think that's a really important question. Then what I do from there too, is once we agree to work together, I think the difference between us and then maybe some of the straight booking agencies is I will look at what they want to talk about, to your point about investing in the spiritual investor. And I'll say, okay, what types of shows are they going to go on and how am I going to position them in multiple different ways? Because especially for me, like, you work with very specific people, like the realtors in some cases, that comes with its own challenges, as we've talked about in the past. when you work with somebody that doesn't necessarily have a really specific type of show, it becomes complicated in that it opens up, literally like millions, hundreds
Yeah.
of thousands,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
say, of shows that have the potential to have them on. And so what I always tend to do first, which I think, people never see this piece behind the scene, is I'll literally have 2 to 3 different genres of shows that then I'll go after, even knowing that within those categories, they're each going to have their own nuance that I'm going to have to say, because you might get a spiritual show, but then you might find spiritual shows that are more religious in nature, which most of my clients,
Right.
not because they're opposed to that, but a lot of the religious shows aren't going to want to have people that, talk about from a more general spiritual perspective, right? Because
Right.
they're mainly just focusing in one area. There's so many different examples I could give you, but what I think is challenging, and I kind of enjoy this challenge, is being like, okay, how am I going to take somebody that talks about money and put them on wellness shows
Right.
by talking about nervous system? Like, I don't think that most general bookers are out there giving it that level of strategic thought.
Right.
And so it actually is, to me, is kind of a fun challenge, or saying like, how do I get on
How do we bridge this gap?
relationship shows? Because let's face it, money in a lot of relationships is one of the biggest issues. And so anyway, it's kind of fun to me to be able to say like, all right, what are the different types of shows I can get them on that are even outside of what you might think right on the surface?
Well, and this also leads into how we put a lot of time into thinking about, it's not just positioning and how we want you to come off, but like how our pitch is structured.
Well, because that's very different. I always say the pitch is the get your foot in the door.
Right.
It's not always even exactly what you're going to talk about in the interview.
And so as you just said, money is actually very important in relationships. But if you were to just send a pitch that says, I have this spiritual investor and she wants to talk about money on your relationship,
they're going to be like, no.
No, you have to structure the pitch so that they understand immediately how
so
this ties in.
I have to talk about how money is tied to the amount of money that you're able to create in your life. It has a lot to do with your sense of self-worth and your identity and what you believe about yourself.
And maybe even further, striking the fear first by saying money is the number one reason why people get divorced.
Exactly.
And
that's usually where it is. And a lot of it has to do with they're not fighting about money. Right? It doesn't really have to. It's not really about money, even though you think it's about money. So anyway, not that we need to get into this, but my point is there are lots of ways to creatively position people that I think that clients often don't see behind the scenes, because especially like my clients, I tend to work with long-term, like years. And so, you can't just keep pitching the same things all the time. I mean, I get bored if I'm doing that. And so I'm constantly looking for ways, and they evolve, like their messages change slightly, or they start to focus in different areas around still their core, like their core business. But it's kind of fun to me to be like, all right, like how am I going to take this in this direction?
Right. Well, and the other thing that most of our clients don't know is how much effort we put into in-person connection, or I mean, it can be virtual, but like making connections that aren't always necessarily. It's not always me making a connection with a producer about X client. It's, I go to Podcast Movement. I've been to Podfest. I have gone to numerous real estate conferences. I will fly with, if I have a client that's doing an in-person interview, I will fly with them at my expense.
Yeah, I do that too.
To an interview, because I want to meet the team.
Yes, there's value for that's an investment that makes sense for us. Yeah,
and that can like, I mean, I have a client right now that was just on a show with YMH Studios, and he would love for them to potentially look at his podcast. I met the guy in charge of revenue growth at YMH at a podcast conference, and I was like, well, I actually was able to meet that guy, and we can structure a proposal for him or whatever.
Yep.
And I would have never met him if I didn't go out of my way to go to these conferences, and I have never once gone to one of these conferences expecting to walk away with a client.
No, it's more than that. Right. Like and that's, I think what you're saying is we invest in ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're not just, hiring like VA. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm picking on that because I think
No.
there's a place for that. I think some people early in their podcasting journey can benefit from just getting
Sure.
on a lot of
them.
podcasts. I think I'm talking about people that are, like at that growth stage of their business, if not the scaling stage where they need to make really valuable connections. And there is a lot that comes out of each of these interviews. And so to your point, I think we're always investing in ourselves, in that capacity to build those relationships. The other thing I do too, because I think you'll agree with this, is you're never not cold pitching. And if you're not
Right.
cold pitching to some degree, I kind of think it's lazy because there's always new people. There's always new podcasts,
yeah.
right? And I think like some people will say, and this is like a PR thing in general, where people are like, oh, the PR person's only as good as their relationships. Well, you know what? Like that's actually kind of a bullshit statement. Because,
How did you get the relationship though? It was cold at some point.
It had to be cold at some point. And then the other thing I'll say about that too is I could have the best relationships with some of the biggest podcasters, which I do, a lot of them. It does not mean that they are going to take
For
every
one reason or another.
client.
We just said that on the last
it just might not
episode.
be a fit, right? So it's
Timing could be wrong, all that stuff.
they're not even that. Like they might just be like, no, that's not for me. And they're not going to do it on my word because what's more important to them than the relationship that we have is maintaining the value for their audience. And if it's not, doesn't mean it's not a valuable client. It just means maybe it's not valuable for them. So people can have all the relationships in the world.
Yeah.
So what I try to do, so the other thing I think that I know I do, I think you do this too, is that we look for connections that can extend beyond just the interview, right? So it's not just like, for me, it's not being like, oh, I got her 3 interviews this month, I'm done. It's more like, how can I get her the 3 best interviews where I know that they might work together again afterwards? So like, for example, my one client has an online educational community. And so what she's wanted to do this year is bring in like big names to do 90-minute sessions on various topics. And so what I've been able to do based on the relationships that I've built and the connections that I've made for her is go back to either guests that she's had on the show or to, hosts that she's been on their shows and said, will you come in and teach on this topic? And of course you can share your offerings or whatever it might be. And it's been really, really successful. And so, and I also find that when I make the connections again, whether either like inviting guests on or getting them on shows, because I do both, right? I do guest curation too. What I found is that then they get invited to teach into the other person's communities.
I've lined up community calls,
yes,
and webinars,
and so like
stuff.
it's getting them additional exposure, and so or like there's friendships that come out of it too.
Right.
I've had Luke Story, who I know you've pitched before. Luke came and took the spiritual investor he was in the mastermind with Elizabeth, my client.
Cool.
So she invited him to come in, so he becomes almost like a and Josh Trent too.
Oh yeah.
So they came and they went and took her mastermind after having her on their shows. So I think there's so many different fun ways to see how and some clients are better at this than others. But I also, even before I pitch, I go and look at their Instagram and I'm like, who do these people follow or this host follow that I know I can put in the pitch, and they're going to be like, oh, she's been on this show.
Right.
So I just think there's little things, there's like kind of special touches that we put on our work that I think clients never see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back to some of just the networking opportunities. Like, I've told you that I was able to book some podcasts for Tom Bilyeu. That came from me and his sponsorship person staying at the same hotel and sharing an Uber. And I just told her what I did, and she's like, actually, the person that does that for our company just left. We should talk.
Yeah.
And that was, again, she wasn't even the producer or anything. Shout out to Christina. She's awesome. And she is in charge of like all the revenue growth at Impact Theory. But that, it just goes to show these little things that we invest in can make a big difference for our clients. So we ran a little bit longer with this episode today, but I hope that, answers stuff for people. Like, here are some of the things we do that we're actively doing day to day that, maybe you're not aware of. These are things to look for in a podcast booking agent. Maybe take some from this, some of this info, and use that when you're researching.
The other booking agents out there are going to be like, oh, Amanda and Spencer, you're making me have to work harder.
I mean, everybody has their own secret sauce.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I'd like to learn from other people that do what we do, because I think there's a lot of things, a lot of little tips that we can pick up. I pick up every single day.
Absolutely. So that does it for this episode of Booked, the podcast that helps you get booked on more podcasts. I'm Spencer Carpenter with my co-host,
Amanda Foley.
and we'll catch you on the next one.